Well, good Friday morning, everyone. And I always want to invite you to church, and we're going to get to Joan. You can see Joan's already here. 9 or 11 at Saddleback Clubhouse 5. Love to have you. It's been a great week of amazing God stories, encounters with God. Come worship Him. If you have your own church, you go worship there. But don't miss out on worshiping this God, who Joan is going to share a little bit more what he did in her life. Just finishing up on her story yesterday, I cut you off and you had a verse. If you didn't see yesterday, Joan shared a story of how God stepped into her mother's life and caused her to not have an abortion and end Joan's life. And Joan was born, and what was the verse you wanted to share on that?
Well, one of my favorite verses is Psalm 139:13. For you created my innermost being, you knit me in my mother's womb. And so that always resonates to me because he was there from the very beginning,
Yeah.
even before the beginning.
Yeah. Well, it was after your beginning.
Yes.
I mean, we none of us remember what we were doing in the womb, but we were doing stuff.
Mhm.
And so that verse, it's why we feel so strongly to save as many babies as we can. But Joan was born, lived her life, and then you fast forward to you were working in your last secular job, and what happened? Or tell us about that.
My boss had not been fair to me for a long time, but all of a sudden one day he asked me to train this new fellow. He was in his early 20s, and he was absolutely insubordinate to me. Well, I would show him how to do some of the licensing, and he'd say, "Oh, I'm not going to do it that way. Oh, there's got to be an easier way. You just do everything hard." And so my boss was right there in the next room. He could hear all this, and he didn't have my back. And it was like the last straw of a lot of things that had happened. And so I decided that night I was just going to resign. Looked at my finances and I just decided I don't have to do this anymore. I need to look full time for another job. So the next morning happened to be my birthday. So I went to the office, and every morning I always turned on my computer and I watched the Daily Hope from Rick Warren. And of course, I'm having second thoughts. I'm not sure if I'm really should quit today or not. I opened up the Daily Hope and it said, "It's never too late to start on your life calling." The scripture that day was from Joshua 14:10 through 12. Now, here I am, 85 years old. I am still as strong as the day that Moses sent me out, and I am just as ready to fight now as I was then. So give me the mountain country the Lord has promised that day long, long ago. Well, that kind of convinced me I really should. It's not too late for me to find my calling. I could do this. At lunchtime, they had a party for me. It's my birthday. And then at the end of the day, I walked in his office and turned in my resignation. Because it was my birthday, each of my daughters called me that evening and they said, "How are you doing? Happy birthday." And I said, "Guess what I did today?" And they said, "Well, you went out to lunch, you got a special present, you did something fun." I said, "No, I quit my job." They were horrified. "Mom, what are you going to do? What's going to happen now?" And I just said, "Well, God's going to take care of me." My prayer that day was, "God, please help me find a part-time job doing that something matters. I have about 6 months savings that I'll get by for a while. So I need your help in this." And so I started just going to interviews and here
Yeah.
and here and, wherever I happened to see online. The problem was I was 69 years old and nobody was hiring people that age. And so, and I was, most of the time I was interviewed by these people that were a third of my age. And so that,
Believe me, John, I relate to this part of the
yeah,
story.
that wasn't going to happen. So one day I had been volunteering at the assisted living program, and one day um, Ray Massey, who was head of the program at that time, came to see how we were doing at our service. And I said, "Oh, congratulations. I hear that you've gone from being an intern to a hired employee." And he goes, "Oh, yeah." And he goes, "If this keeps going, I get to hire an assistant." I said, "Well, I'd like to apply for that job." And so he said, "Okay, send Rick Bradford your resume." So I did. And the next thing I know, Rick invited me to an event that they were having in Clubhouse 5 because each of the staff members were going to be there. Each one of them took me out by the pool and interviewed me to decide if I belonged on the team.
I do remember that. Well, I didn't know the backstory that you had told the Lord that you needed a job in about 6 months or less, but it turns, well, finish your story. And
So,
so,
so as it happened, the interview process takes a while. And so they speeded that up for some reason. I never figured that out. But I was supposed to, I actually was hired 6 months and 6 days from the time that I resigned from my first job. Now, that was an answered prayer.
see, that's what I love this story. It's a little different from some of the miraculous things. Because a lot of folks, maybe yourself, uh, think, well, I've never seen God at work. Well, I want you to always think in terms of the subtleties of the way he answers prayer, because it's never a coincidence. Had Joan in his loving hands the whole time. And I imagine maybe you got nervous over time. I don't know how that went. But the reality is, God answered Joan's prayer exactly as she prayed it. And I was kidding Joan that she should have said 4 months or something. But but she said six. And believe me, there have been many times that I have prayed. And then I say after the fact, why didn't I ask for more? Because God just answers to your prayer quite often. And he did that for you.
Until you mentioned that, it never occurred to me that I could have asked for 4 months.
Yeah, yeah. We'd
But
have
he knew
speeded,
anyway.
he'd have had us speed it up faster. And the reality is, when Joan also prayed for a significant job, a job with meaning and purpose, and that's exactly what he gave you because you became, well, this was just how she began because then Joan was full time with us, kept me, and then worked directly for me for some years. And you were such a blessing to me, but the whole church, your whole church, the whole church. And so, Joan, I just am praising God with you, you know?
And he has a plan for us. And we don't know what it is, and we don't look and we don't ask.
Yeah.
But if we ask, and I've never been, I don't think ever, more specific than I was in that prayer. And when I shared it with my daughters, they're going, "Oh, Mom, we're praying for you too."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he is so good. And so I just encourage everyone out there that go back and look at the way that God has answered your prayer. And remember to thank him and give him the credit for it because he is in your life, assuming that you're a follower of Jesus, as Joan is. Joan, thank you for the last couple of days and for all you've done for us and our church and for me. And you're a blessing in my life. So,
Thank you. It's always been a joy to work with you.
yeah. All right, everyone. Well, I hope to see you on Sunday at worship. If not, we're going to be back here with more encounters with God on Monday. See you then.